Hey everyone, my name's Craig and I'm here on behalf of Guitar Showcase to talk to Dave Ristrim. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty darn good.
He's a well-known, well-rehearsed musician, local born, and now he lives in Nashville. You're a session guy, you're a touring guy, you're an everything guy, and I want to thank you for coming down and speaking with us today for the first issue of Showcase Music magazine.
Happy to be here.
So why don't we just get started with a little bit of background. So you're from San Jose originally?
Born and raised San Jose. Lived here most of my life, actually.
Nice. And I understand that you used to actually work at Guitar Showcase.
Yeah, I bought my first electric guitar here at Guitar Showcase in the 70s. Met Dan probably 77, 78 and been friends with him ever since. He'd been bugging me to work here for decades. I finally gave in about the mid-90s. I worked here for 4 or 5 years part-time before I moved to Nashville.
Nice. So you've been playing since the 70s, obviously. What instrument did you start on?
Well, I started actually in the 60s on clarinet and piano, and then got a banjo in 1972. That kind of like threw me into stringed instrument world, and got kind of hooked on that for the rest of my life. But I played woodwinds through high school, picked up all, pretty much everything, even double reed instruments. I was all kind of fascinated by that.
Nice. So so you said you started guitar kind of later.
Guitar, probably 73. I started teaching myself guitar, but just like with a nylon string, it was my mom's. I didn't get a guitar until, well, 76 probably. I got my first good steel string guitar.
What was your first guitar?
First steel string was a Takamine. Solid wood one. Was a really great,
Nice.
Great copy of Martin.
Awesome. So do you play guitar primarily now as a professional musician?
That's a tough one to say. I'd say no on guitar, but because I play pedal steel and banjo and acoustic guitar primarily right now. In other bands, I would play more electric guitar. Right now I'm not playing any. This coming year I probably will. So I'm kind of a guy, if there's a song that needs something, they go, hey, can you do this? And I usually can. Pretty much anything but fiddle. I won't touch a fiddle. It's like, I mean, yeah, you don't want me to touch a fiddle.
They're tough to pick up too. So
yeah, well, they're actually easy to pick up.
Well, yeah, I guess you've got me on a technicality there.
That's what I do.
So we've covered that you play an array of instruments. So I assume then that you have an array of influences. Is there one that stands out above the rest as far as influences go?
Interesting. I mean, I'd have to break down in different categories, I suppose, because I mean, banjo was such a big part of my teenage years and all that. Bela Fleck, but even before him, you got guys like obviously Earl Scruggs and Bill Keith. I'd say I'd start with that as a stringed instrument influence. And then from that, teaching myself guitar, I got into Clarence White and anything bluegrass oriented. Got an electric guitar and immediately got into his electric world, Clarence White's B-Bender stuff. And then I got into jazz, so I was a huge fan of all the classic jazz guitar players. Never got very good at playing jazz, but I learned a lot about chords and harmony and theory.
Nice. So you got a pretty good background in banjo and mostly a lot of jazz too. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm personally a big fan of learning jazz because I think it opens up a whole world of musical stylings personally. So we talked about how you worked at Showcase. How did Guitar Showcase kind of help you progress as a musician, or did it?
Oh, I'll tell you, I mean, it's progressed as a musician. It's myself. It helped me actually just get a little extra money to be able to move to Tennessee. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but I mean, in a sense, the fact that this is a local store and always had a kind of community family vibe to it, I was attracted to that and would buy a lot of my instruments here, especially my electric stuff. There's another local acoustic store that Dan knows about, and they're great people too, and I bought most of my high-end acoustic stuff from them just because I started buying from them in probably '72.
Nice. So you're a mom and pop store kind of guy.
Yeah, and but as far as how it helped me musically, I would just say it's just there's a good community of people here, and a lot of musicians, all the higher end professional musicians I know in the Bay Area, all know about Guitar Showcase and all shop here. So it's kind of, you get that kind of a common bond thing.
Yeah. Exactly, and I understand that while you were working here, you were traveling, what, every month or a couple months to travel to Nashville?
That, you know, when I was working here, I was trying to get extra money to get a down payment on a house in Tennessee. I was working in a band that was based out of the Bay Area originally. Most of them moved to Nashville, so I was touring with them. So I'd go back there and spend 3 months on the road, come back for a couple months, go back. So, you know, Dan was really cool. And Gary was very nice about letting me have time off to just go do that and come back, and I'd work my tailbone off. And
yeah, I can attest to that. They've done the same for me as well. They've been very generous.
Good people.
How did you get into performing and kind of taking it to the next level, becoming, you know, taking it out of the garage, taking it out of local gigs, and, you know, actually start touring? Did you just...
Man, that's for every person and every situation, it's gonna be different. For me, what happened was, I started playing banjo. A friend of mine says, hey, there's a gig. I mean, this is the first professional gig. I had no idea that you could even get paid money playing an instrument. So and nowadays, most people, I think, get into it. They think, I'm going to be a rock band, be a rock star, and make big money. I didn't have any idea about that. Any idea. So I started making money doing that. Bought a pedal steel guitar. Not too many people play that. Started getting gigs in bars, just like anyone else would probably. You know, parties, barbecues, in bars. And from that you meet guys and you start realizing this guy's way more talented than everyone else in the band, so I'm going to hang out with him. And then you learn other people that he knows. It's like any kind of a family tree. You have roots and then it branches out. And then you all of a sudden you find yourself being asked to be in a band that just got signed to Atlantic Records, which was a Cactus choir that was from the Bay Area. And that's kind of how I got into that world of, you know, a little more high-end musicians and stuff.
Well, speaking of high-end musicians, you've played with legends like Trace Adkins and Clint Black, and as well as pop and R&B icons such as Jewel and Bobby Brown. How do you manage to not only grow a client, you know, or I wouldn't say a clientele list necessarily, but a list of contacts like that as a musician and line up gigs like that?
Well, I tell you, it's like part of the tree. Moving to Nashville, different bands I've played in, lead to another band, lead to another band. I found myself working with Big and Rich for several years. And John Rich, huge songwriter, has contacts with everybody in all genres of music. So he was putting together a TV show called Gone Country, which I won't go into details on it. It's actually a trippy show. It's like a reality show. It's one of the only ones I actually like, but not just because I'm on it. It was kind of fun. But during that show, he would have all these different people, actors, you know, and musicians be on the show, and we would back them up, working on like one of their original songs, and also they'd be writing a song for the show. And got to play with just so many people I can't even list them. I mean, I mentioned earlier, George Clinton was on the show. We got to do things with him, and gosh, Sheila E.
I know that you've toured with a lot of really cool artists. Who have you been touring with lately, and as of, you know, the last 6 months to a year, I guess?
Well, actually, for the last 3 years, I've been with Luke Bryan. I joined him getting to 2010, and it's been crazy. I mean, he's so busy. His records are selling like hotcakes. We were doing about 140 shows a year for the first 2 years. Last year we did, this year we did about 115. And next year we're doing mostly all headline shows at arenas and stuff, so it's going to be great.
Nice. So you've done a lot of touring with Luke Bryan. I noticed, what was it, last week you were on the CMA Awards.
Oh gosh, yeah. Last week we were on actually the ACA Awards, the CMT Awards, the CMA Awards, and we had a GAC special. I know there's a lot of letters in there. I don't even know what they all mean, to be honest. But yeah, we got a lot of TV exposure because he's really hot right now, selling records like crazy, like I said, and the young girls love him. You know, he's kind of a beefcake or something apparently. he's a great guy, man. He's a great boss. But before Luke, I was working with Big and Rich and Jewel. I was in her last full band thing that she did. She toured, and that was a really great gig. Both of them actually are.
So you get a mandolin and you just turn it on its side.
Yeah, put it lap style. Instead of play it this way, you just set it on your lap. The strings up, kind of like, you know, what's his name, Healy. Jeff Healy would do, those guys. You know, I'd play it this way, the flat pick or finger picks, whatever, and just play slide.
Do you have any videos of you doing that online?
Nope, not that I know of.
Oh man, that'd be cool to see though.
Yeah.
Instructional, a whole new instructional series. How to play
how to
slide
not play normal.
I think there's a niche for you in the video market there.
I actually played slide bass on a session out here in the Bay Area. We were just trying to come up with like, what does this song need? And the engineer said, it needs some kind of low part. I'm like, well, give me that bass. So I stuck a pencil underneath the strings at like say the second or third fret, tuned it kind of weird, and actually played a slide bass part that way.
Glass or steel slide?
Probably steel. Probably steel, folks.
All right. Cool. Or we're back. We're back. We're back. All right. Let me.
Where did we leave off, Craig?
I think. I think we were talking a little bit about studio versus touring, and what percentage of time would you say you spend in each?
That's a horrible question because the answer is probably, I'd say 95% touring and 5% studio right now. Because the thing about that, quick story, in Nashville especially, when you're out on the road all the time, the calls drop off for studio work because they know you're not available because you're always gone, whether you're at home or not. So that's what happens is after a few years of being on the road constantly, your session work drops down to nil. When you're in town for several months off, you have to make your calls and emails to people saying, hey, I'm around, I'm available. It might pick back up. I've been lucky enough to start getting internet sessions. So that's taking up the slack there. So I have time off from the road. I'm in my home studio cranking out stuff for people.
Nice. So working from home is not a problem for you then when you're in town.
Love it.
So you spend a good chunk of your time on the road. Then does that ever complicate the home life at all, or? No,
my wife is pretty understanding. You know, we've been married a long time, and we're both very independent. So I can spend time by myself. She didn't have to follow me around, and vice versa. So we get along great.
Cool, so no clawing at each other.
No, actually, if I'm home for too long, that's when it gets weird.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess it works out for the better then for both of you being out on the road. Yes. Do you have any advice for aspiring musicians who maybe hope to play, lap mandolin someday?
I would say just take as many gigs as you can. And at some point, you're going to start figuring out which ones are better than the others, and maybe let some of the really awful gigs drop to the wayside and keep taking the better gigs. Hang around musicians that are better than you. It's the first thing I would say. I mean, I've been in too many bands where it's mostly populated by people that are, I mean, I'm not saying, oh, I'm great, they're not, but you kind of can suss it out. The drummer can't keep the time, the bass player's out of tune. You just try not to play with those guys much because they're going to drag you down, to be honest. You could develop a tin ear. I know guys that work in bands that are always out of tune. They can't play in tune now because they're so used to hearing things out of tune. And you just kind of have to pick and choose and go with what's good, go with what excites you. And if you're planning a career in music, look at what type of music you're playing and go to the center of a city that does that and features that. If you're going to be a metal rock player, LA is probably the place to go. If you want to be anything related to country, and there's plenty of rock in Nashville, go to Nashville. If you want to be a jazz player, New York. Really, I mean, it's you kind of have to try those centers of what you're going for. Yes, you can stay right here in San Jose and absolutely make it, for sure. I mean, there's plenty of bands that have done it. But for what I do, I had to go there to get to this level. And I couldn't have stayed here and done it. It just won't happen. For what I do, anyway.
Okay, well, that's good. That's definitely quality information to get. I wish we'd spoken a few years ago, personally.
Yeah. And there's no guarantees either. That's the thing. I mean, I was lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones. I went to Nashville and started working immediately, and boom, haven't looked back.
Nice. Well, Dave, I want to. Again, thank you very much for coming down to Showcase and talking with me today and giving us and our viewers a lot of insight, I believe, into what it takes to really be a musician these days and really get out there and do it. So that being said, I have a couple small questions left for you.
Here we go.
Number 1, favorite color?
Green.
All right.
That's
Number
easy.
2, if you had $1 million to donate to a charity, which would it be?
Ooh. Well, that's a tough one. Probably St. Jude's.
Very nice. Very
Yeah.
good one. And last but not least, if you could have a Ben & Jerry's flavor named after you, what would be in it and what would you name it?
I was actually talking about that earlier. Licorice would be the flavor. I know that sounds weird. Boy, what would I call that? Ooh. Dave's licorice stick? That's kind of... no, maybe not. That's a little weird. But you know what a licorice stick is, right? Clarinet, which was my first instrument. So, I mean, actually...
So maybe...
And they do quirky names.
They do double entendres.
They might allow it. I don't know. Don't go to a dark place with that, folks. I mean, seriously. It's clarinet.